Welcome to another episode of the Home Care Experience with TNA. I'm Amy Taylor, joined as always by my insightful co-host, Troy Brooks. In today's episode, we're tackling a hot topic that's becoming more critical by the day: cybersecurity in the home care industry. From the rising threat of cyber attacks to best practices for protecting sensitive patient data, we're diving deep into what it takes to stay secure in an ever-changing digital landscape. So whether you're a healthcare professional, a home care provider, or simply someone interested in staying ahead of cyber risk, this conversation is for you. Let's get started with the Home Care Experience with TNA. Alrighty. Hey everybody, it's Amy Taylor and Troy Brooks with the Home Care Experience with TNA. And today we're going to go over cybersecurity. And it's something that I've gotten deeply invested in this year, being 2024. We've set up new policies, new procedures, rolling into 25, and taken it very, very seriously at my firm. And so I've just had some exposure to agencies that have had hacks, even more so on my CPA buddy side. There's been a lot of incidents there, and just like shopping for insurance and what do you do if something happens and how do you know something's gone wrong? So kind of go through some of those topics and just share a little bit about what I know and what I'm looking at and what I've learned through my IT vendor and some IT forensics guys that I visited with as well, that really that's all they do is security hacks. They're the kind of guys that if you're a big firm, big agency, you can hire them to try to hack your system. And so learned a lot from them. So that was pretty cool. So that's kind of what we want to go into today. You got anything to add to that?
I mean, there's some, this is just something that isn't going away. The Texas Association for Home Care and Hospice, which we're both members of, I'm on the education committee, and in that committee, we discussed the fact that there will likely be a cybersecurity event class almost every education session.
Oh.
And so because it's just that important and it's something that keeps coming up. I think the first time I noticed it, well, it's been around for a while. I mean, I remember years ago in my malpractice insurance, there was a section for cybersecurity coverage, and I'm like, oh, great. And so it was one of those things that we all knew about. It was there. It's just that now it's a little bit more in our face, especially in healthcare, because in healthcare is where you have a huge amount of personal information that is a very tempting target to anyone who is on the lookout for taking personal information and doing something sketchy with it, or just simply trying to sell it or whatever. Yeah. So that is one of the things I'm seeing a lot more of. And so it's becoming, this whole cybersecurity environment is becoming almost its own little thing in a sense, in that there are ramifications for failing to maintain your environment safely.
A lot of them, right? And this is what they do for a living. And so they're after much bigger targets, and they're after tranches of data. They want personal sensitive data. There are a couple of ways they go about it. The one is reputation extortion. So they're going to take your data and extort you by telling you if you don't pay up, they're going to release all the data that they got from you and basically blast you online that you didn't keep your client's data safe, you didn't keep your patient's data safe, and that you don't run a good business. So that's one aspect. Then the other is, especially if I think of like big hospital systems, is they'll encrypt your data. And it could be hospital system, it could be a big accounting firm, but they're going to go in and encrypt your data. And when that happens, you know right away because you go in and everything's locked. You cannot get to your records. That happens really, really fast. And then you've got a decision to make. Am I going to pay and they unencrypt everything and now I can operate? Or can my IT guy take care of this? And, what is that? What's that look like? And then you've got the smaller class criminals. They're called bad actors or threat actors in the cybersecurity world. And that, maybe they're just coming after your personal information. They're going to go write some hot checks, stuff like that. We've dealt with that for a long time now, especially the check fraud. But we've even dealt for quite a while with tax returns. So if an individual's identity was stolen and somebody tried to file a tax return with their identity, then that individual has to go through all these hoops to get a PIN number for the IRS and be able to, so we can file their tax returns. Well, there are attacks that go on to like big tax firms. So CPA firms that do a lot of tax work because they can go in, the criminals can go in and get a lot of tax returns. They pull the data files. So for instance, I use UltraTax. That's my software for tax returns. Well, so they also have UltraTax. So they can take a backup of all my client files, make a copy of them and put them in their system and go change the numbers and change the banking information. And so they'll have your info and your tax return. They'll put some bogus numbers on it, get a big refund, file a tax return, and it's all refund direct deposited to some bogus account. So that's another angle that they come specifically after accounting and CPA firms. Those are only the big ones that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's probably others, but, kind of wanted to talk through how you store your data, how you protect your data, keep it segregated. Having it in two separate places. So we're a Google shop. So we use Google for everything. And then we have a big practice manager, kind of like, an agency's EMR system, where all their patient data is. That's our practice manager. Well, it's highly, highly secure. And I'm not saying Google's not, but if you're able to remote into my computer and take control of my computer, you've got access to all of Google without any kind of, yes, I have to log in, but once I'm on my machine, I'm logged in. So we've gone to where we have MFA, which is multi-factor authentication or dual factor authentication, where you go to log in, you put in your password, it sends you a code or it sends you a little like duo just to get into that's my laptop up there. I have to approve that. But once they're in that system, if you don't have those to start with, so that's just on Windows. But once they're in there, they could have full reign in Google.
So let's talk about that for a second, because so one of the problems I run into is when something blows up. Clients always wonder, like, if they're being investigated, why am I being investigated? Why am I being audited? Or they're always, and everybody wants to know the reason why, what causes that kind of thing. And the same thing with a cybersecurity event, like, why this happened. But the thing is, when you're in the middle of it, the why becomes it's an important question, but it becomes one that
we'll deal with that later.
Yeah. But my understanding is that there are different ways. And that's one of the things I don't think that people understand is there's more than one way to go about getting into your system. One of them would be like compromised passwords.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed just from personal experience working with other people is that unless you create a culture within your organization of cybersecurity, I mean, there are tons of people who just, I deal with organizations every day where the ordinary worker or whoever that is, their attitude towards it is much more lackadaisical.
Yep.
And
I think there's still a lot of, oh, this will never happen to me.
Sort of like when I saw that, oh, cybersecurity and my insurance. Okay, great. Okay, I'll never use that, but you know.
And seeing it, like for me, it used to be included with our professional liability, but then it got to where, no, you need a separate policy. And just to put it in perspective, my policy went from $2,500 a year to almost 10 grand a year. And I compared with other colleagues, they've all gone up. My $2,500 a year was way, way, way low. I did go to a more robust provider, I think, and I knew I was going to pay more, but I wasn't ready for 4 times more. But I'm worried about it. And I feel like, again, this is my theory. And have an ex-husband, I was like, oh, yeah, there's one of your theories. Well, what the hell else do you come up with? I mean, I don't know, whatever. That's a whole nother episode in itself. But my theory is I kind of feel like the really small firms and agencies are not quite the target because they don't have a lot of data. And the big organizations, while they're still a target because they got lots of data, a lot of them have big full-time IT security teams.
Yeah.
And so they're a lot harder to break into. But then this middle group that would be like my firm size, the clients I work with, like not the big hospital systems, but those of you that think you're mom and pops, but $1 million to 15, 25 million. I think we're prime sitting ducks because I think we've got enough data to go after, but we don't have the security in place, and that's why I'm harping on it.
Well, also, at some point they'll figure it out. There are the folks in Texas in the Medicaid waiver programs. They're the ones who have, may have a large number of patients or consumers, and yet they have a huge amount of data. But as far as the size of operation they are is very small. Think about consumer-directed services. That they can have a huge amount of data,
and it's also
a very small organization.
And it's even a one-to-one. One attendant or one consumer, one attendant. So you've got the patient side and the employee side. I mean, that's a ton of data to get a hold of. It's wild. So that's kind of the thing that I wanted to really emphasize is don't think it's not going to happen to you. And we need to be thinking about this as a when it happens, not if it happens. But back to your point about how do they get in? They can hack somebody's password. It's called brute force attack, where they fire off just 1 million passwords until it one clicks. But then there's also you've got a big network environment, and let's say you had a port. I am not technical, so just follow me with the non-technical side.
Those little things you plug into?
No, like little roadways coming into your network, like little tunnels and little access endpoints, they call them, but little access where you remote in. And so then maybe you've got, maybe you had a remote staff, or you lived somewhere and you were remoting into your server, your network, but then that is no longer used, and IT never went and deleted it or tied it up or secured it, and it's got just some. Or maybe there was some users we saw where an IT provider had their own login to a network, and then it was dormant. But it had like a password of like password 1 or some BS. And so it wasn't tightened down. But even so, they can come in from multiple places. And so
this gets to be really interesting in
remove us, and I can't remove myself. But yeah, cleaning that stuff up and being you got to be intentional about it, intentional about security, and intentional about locking things down, and stuff like I use Chrome and I save every password and every login, and I've had to quit that. I even stuff that I feel like Tommy Bahama. What are they going to do? Go shopping? But I mean, I guess it probably has my credit card saved, so that probably happened. Bad thing with me is I'd never even know I didn't get the clothes or whatever it was, because I'm a bit of a shopper a little bit sometimes. But anyways, keeping your system tight. But the one thing, so I got to learning more about this through my accounting group, because it was happening. And there's only like 300 members, and these are all small business accountants. And I think we've had 3 or 4 breaches that I know of in the last couple of years. So we've talked more and more about it. So we were introduced to a vendor called Mox5, Moxfive. That's what they do, is they're the forensic IT team. And then they also have a partner called After Dark, which is an interesting, the A is there, but it's AFTRDRK, like there's no other vowels. And their name is so fitting. Their name, it's very cursy, so I won't leave it. BAMF. So I'll let y'all, if you can figure that out. They are scary looking dudes. And as I met with them on Zoom, picking their brain and stuff, but they're the ones that are hired to go hack your system. And they're sneaky and they look shady, but that's what they do. And I can just imagine them in this little dungeon, this like dark basement, just like hacking computers. And he goes, yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do. One was this big white dude. I mean, like fair skin, like almost like skinhead, like bald, hardly spoke. And then the other one was a skinny, lanky dude, but always had his ball cap on backwards, kind of dark complected. And they were just funny, Sal and Ben. But anyways, picked their brain for a while. Could probably have them on a podcast at some point. But that's what they do, is they go look for vulnerabilities. And so what they taught me is, in this criminal world, and I'm somewhat fascinated by the business side of this criminal world. Yeah. So one outfit will get the access. So there's crooks that all they do is they try to break into your system. Once they've breached it, they sell that access to another group, highest bidder. And so whoever wants it, they're like, oh, let's see. Okay, it's a home care agency, and it's, it'll have some demographics about it. Somebody will pay for the access. Then they go in and exploit the access, and they go in and get on the system. And there are stories of, the bad actors were in for 30 days before anybody even knew it. Creeping around.
My understanding is, so one of the guys that I knew that used to, when I had my own firm in Houston, and they took care of my website. They did a lot of work for oil companies, and there was this one period where there was an oil crisis. There was there was tension with Russia, and he said that their clients were getting they were getting attacked constantly. He said that one of the things that was amazing was how patient that hackers are, and they put the information they will be in a system. And they will wait until just the right moment. They will have he goes, it's infuriating patience is the way he described it, that they will wait until just the right moment to do whatever they want to do. One of the things that you were talking about is what has piqued my interest in, you're talking about what has sort of gotten your attention lately with this. And then sort of what's got my attention lately with this is about a year and a half ago, there was some article came out about a breach. And so I looked at it, and then that article, how there are like in the articles, there'll be links to other articles that they reference. So I started hitting the links and started looking, and it's like, there are all these breaches, and the theme behind all of them was that in that particular situation, the federal government was bringing the False Claims Act against them. Against who? Against the person who had. Okay, what they would do is like whoever had the breach was victim of the breach. they would go after them for false claims, and I'll explain that in a little bit.
Well, go after who for false claims?
The person who got, let's say it was a vendor who had data. Okay, what they do is they'll say that, well, you failed to protect your system, and so what happens? You cause false claims to be submitted to the government, and so then they go and they use the False Claims Act to go after them.
So the victim
uses
the false claims.
The victim becomes the target of the False Claims Act case.
So the victim's customer.
So the victim, the person, the vendor.
Can we use some names? Can we set up an example?
Okay.
Because let's
say, well, let's just say Home Health Agency.
Yeah.
Home Health Agency they're breached. Okay. Well, what happens is the federal government says, well, guess what? You did not take care of your system well enough. So all your claims that you submitted to the government for payment are false claims now because
the federal government comes after them.
With the False Claims Act, individuals can sue on behalf of the government. So it becomes a big circus. But that's one of the things, that's a new twist in all of this cybersecurity and all these breaches, that if you fail to maintain a secure environment, you don't do your due diligence in making sure you have a secure environment, you could be prosecuted under the False Claims Act, which is civil, it's not criminal. But I mean, you're opening yourselves to a ton of liability, a massive amount of liability, both civil and throughout the civil world.
Yeah,
and it's not just being sued by your consumers or your clients or whatever. You could be the government could sue you for false claims. So it's a twist. It's a new wrinkle that's happened in the past several years with these breaches. So there's an added layer of consequences for failing to maintain a secure environment. And
I think that's kind of where I'm coming from. Like, I'll tell you, for years now, we've done security training, and it's any new staff, they take a 45-minute security training class. It's online. Then every month, and we've kind of gotten way too into it because we just finished season 5. So every month we assign a training, and they're like 5 to 10 minute little, it's like a little movie, a little sitcom. And so anyways, so it's called The Inside Man, and it's done through a piece of software. So the software is called Know Before, if any of you guys need that. Know, KNOWBE, and then the number 4. But what they do is they simulate phishing tests. So they'll send phishing emails, and it'll report back to you who clicked on it, who didn't, those kind of things. So it's really good. So we've been doing that for years. And these little episodes are all the same. It's gone through identity theft, social engineering, the AI, and how you could be sitting there and it would look like me, how they can do all that stuff. And it's pretty creepy, but it's been also very entertaining. We do one season a year. So we just finished season 5. So we've done this for 5 years. So, I'm thinking, we're good. We got cyber insurance and stuff. But then when you start hearing like details of how this is happening, it starts making you question it a lot more. And like you said, being sued by outside parties, this is a little bit random, totally on topic, but kind of a little tangent. Sometimes I know for us, we've had clients be like, well, here's my credit card. Can you just set it up in your payment system? Well, we can't, because we don't maintain any payment data, because that keeps liability off of me. So our system is set up that, you got a link, you enter your payment details. It's in the system, but it's not in my system. It's in the merchant processor. So only the merchant processor has access to that data. And even then, I think it's highly encrypted to where, so so if somebody hacked my system, they're not getting payment information kind of thing. So, I think with cybersecurity comes a lot of pain, but I think it would be a lot more painful if you don't take the steps to secure your system.
Well, it's just like, this is an ancient adage, which is agent will be able to tell, and then that ball gets rolling.
Yeah.
Because, so what are your thoughts on that?
So I think back up even a little bit further. Okay, so first of all, you get a policy. Mm-hmm. Remember, you get what you pay for. There are going to be some smaller outfits with lower price points on the policies, but make sure you know what's in that policy and what's being covered. Mm-hmm. There was one, and I think it was like the cybersecurity that was included in the professional liability policy. And you read it, and it goes, does not cover criminal events. Well, then what the F does it cover if it's not a criminal event? Like, I was like, okay, so you got to be real careful. And then so at our last, I don't know if it was in May or November, our accounting group conference, we're there, everybody's talking about cybersecurity and stuff, that we have a whole big topic on it. And so one of the guys, I can't remember what it was. And he was like, oh, I'm going to make sure I do that. I'm going to make sure I do that. I said, okay. And I come back around to him later. I go, do you have insurance, cybersecurity insurance? He goes, oh, yeah, $100,000 coverage. I go, baby, that ain't getting you nowhere. Because, I mean, these ransom payments are well over $100,000. I don't think, I've talked to the IT security, the forensic IT, the negotiators, the After Dark and Mox 5. They said on the firm that it happened with, I mean, they were over $100,000 just in fees. That didn't even get the legal fees. So there's legal fees, there's forensic IT, there's mining through the data. So you need to make sure you got enough coverage. But then you want to make sure you have a team that offers pre-claim assistance. Well, that's kind of getting into professional liability.
Well, the thing about what the coverage, though, that you're talking about is that there's the damage itself, but there's also the ancillary services that go along with it, legal services, the IT services, all of those things.
Yeah, and so you want to really understand what's included. And honestly, a good policy, they're going to make you prove up some of your security. So they're going to go through and say, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have that? And so then, honestly, that's a really good way to learn, what all do I need to put in place? I wonder if Moshe would be good to talk about this.
I'm not sure.
Micah? Because he's doing healthcare and he's doing cybersecurity.
He probably would be.
Yeah. He's an IT vendor that he's really focused on the healthcare segment and the IT security part. So he might be somebody interesting to bring in. But I don't think there's any harm in contacting if you even think there's something going down. I think the proper chain of events would be contact IT right away, let them know what's going on, make sure they take you seriously.
Yeah.
And then let them determine, something's going on, and then immediately contact your insurance provider.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's one of those things where you file a claim and then it's like, I wish I had not filed that claim.
I've never really heard anybody say that. No. I hear people afraid of doing that, but I've never heard anybody say, oh, I shouldn't have filed that claim.
Yeah. And the pre-claim assistance, just since I mentioned it, was professional liability. And I can speak directly on this. I had a client going through a nasty divorce. I tried to just show him it could be done in 6 months and out, but he's still on year 7 now. Yeah. And anyways, I'm on his side, if you will, and her attorney wanted documents from me. And I didn't feel like I was supposed to give them out. I was like, I feel like that's confidential information and I don't know you. And you say you're an attorney and you're working for the trustee and blah, blah, blah. But I wanted to go to my insurance and say, hey, here's the scenario. How do I address this? Like, am I okay giving that information over? And my cheap ass insurance at the time was like, well, you would have to file a claim and then we could help you, but we can't help you until you file a claim. Well, I'm trying to prevent a claim, folks, kind of like preventative health care, you know? I'm trying to prevent a claim. And so I changed insurance after that. And so I make sure that I have pre-claim assistance where I want to be able to call and say, hey, here's the scenario. And all they would have had to say is, no, you need a subpoena. So I made the other side subpoena me. Then I can give over the documents and keep myself out of trouble.
It's sort of like with a house with, if you have a flood. I mean, you want you want to let your insurance company will often send folks in to start remediation work right away.
Yes.
To prevent further damage.
And I would say that if let's say you got solid insurance, but maybe your IT provider is kind of, I think they're good. Mm-hmm. Unless you've got really high-end IT provider, those forensic IT are going to be way better than your people. So to that point, file a claim and let them come in and really secure the environment and take over.
Yeah, that is one of the other things that when I do have a client who has an event that I immediately put them in contact. If they don't have someone, if their insurance company hasn't hooked them up with someone, I immediately put them in contact with forensic IT people because that's what they need. They need to seal the environment, you know, and then go from there. Yeah. The other thing that I've run into is people who, I guess people focus on what they know. But a lot of times when there's things like this, the first thing people are focusing on is, who do I need to report this and what do I need to report and that kind of thing. And I think sometimes people focus too much on that. And because a lot of folks that I deal with, they want to get things out of the way. They want to get things done. And so my thought on the reporting, both to if you have to report to, say, the Office of Civil Rights for HIPAA violations, or you have to report to, or you have to send notices to your clients and consumers, to be thoughtful about it. And don't just do it willy-nilly. Be very thoughtful about it, how you do it, when you do it. Take advantage. There's a reason there are deadlines out there. Take advantage of deadlines. In that, take the time. I mean, a lot of people see a deadline and go, oh, I want to get this done ahead of time. You don't get a gold medal for doing anything to, well before a deadline. So, I mean, there are certainly mitigation steps that you might want to take. Well, that's one thing. But, I would just, that's one of the things that I deal with is just, that's one of the things I've learned over the past 20 years of private practice is there's more than one way to go about things. And if you go about things in a way that's thoughtful, you're going to be able to more likely live with the consequences or live with the results. Yeah. So
I need to practice that. Yeah. Didn't you? I think I read this morning, just like that, take a breath before you react. I'm pretty reactionary. I need to learn that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have this little rule that, if somebody sends you an email that ticks you off to wait till the next day to respond. And I've waited a week at times. Depends on what it is. But so taking a few moments before responding is often helpful. Yeah.
I want to, and we've already been going for 33 minutes. That flew by. Mm-hmm. But I do
we haven't covered a lot of things.
I know. I barely touched on my thing up there. So we'll make this one a little bit longer. But the one thing I want to talk about that, two things really is a data purge and segregating your data. And so segregating data, this is something I learned this year through other accounting firms. And I think it's very pertinent to healthcare providers. Segregate your data. All your patient data all needs to be in your EMR, right? Well, then don't let it also be in Google Drive or on Microsoft SharePoint or whatever the Microsoft world is. Segregate it. It's all this data is in one place and it's not commingled over here with this data. And so find out what is your most secure place, and that's where your patient data needs to be. It really needs to be your EMR. I don't want to name names, and I don't, because I'm not sure I remember the right name, but one of the very popular in Texas EMR systems I heard did not have MFA. They did not have that as a capability. If you are on an EMR system, and I'd never tell somebody to change, but if they cannot offer MFA, multi-factor authentication, so when you go to log in, you get a text or a code or a duo or whatever, or even an email with a code, you need to bail. That, to me, is non-negotiable.
MFA is so common now. I know. Almost everything has it.
And it blew my mind. So I'm not sure it was true. Mm-hmm. I did not fact check it, but there was conversation about that. And that was just in the last couple months. But back to segregating data. Like really keep your data segregated from patient data here, employee payroll data somewhere else. So, I know that some of the systems say that they do payroll and all of your nurses and everything are in the EMR. But if you truly are running payroll elsewhere, which all of my clients are, none of my clients run payroll through Vesta, then put all your employee detailed data, so security number, date of birth, those things in the payroll system, but don't duplicate it in the EMR. This also goes to those of you that want to connect your patients and your EMR to QuickBooks. I don't find QuickBooks to be highly secured, but I don't put any sensitive data in QuickBooks. I don't have payroll data in there. I don't have patient data in there. And some people want to connect those. I think keeping things somewhat segregated is going to be far more beneficial down the road to keep things. So if somebody breaches one place, they don't have everything. They have one thing. And then purging data. This one, so us as CPAs, we're supposed to keep everything 7 years. Do you know what the patient retention
about
policy?
The same thing? And that's a difficult question to answer because it depends on the patient.
Okay.
Pediatrics are different from adults.
But roughly, same thing. You got a retention period. Well, I was really bad about what blows my mind. I love deleting shit. But then when I start really digging into our system, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to delete a whole lot more. And so we were saving QuickBooks desktop files we would get. And so I found how much data we were saving. And I said, this has to end. If nothing else, I'm paying for storage space because everything's in the cloud. And so I still have a lot to be deleted, but I've gone through and started that purge, but get a system. And now is the time, right? We're in December at the end of the year. Like I have kind of an administrative checklist of things I go through to clean up before I go into the new year. Archive old clients, yada, yada. Well, I'm going to add to it, archive all. So I think I've archived 17 and back. So I think now I'll be archiving 18 and back. Then I got to go archive everything for 2018. Okay. Delete, archive, delete kind of thing. And on that, just a little tangent. If you're ever in a lawsuit or subpoenaed or whatever, if you still have data from 10 years ago, now you got to produce that data too.
That's true. If you got it.
Yeah. If you got it and it's in that request time frame, but you don't have to keep it all. They'll request it.
That's true.
Sorry.
That's where
3 dogs.
Yeah. Doorbell. That is true. I mean, that's one of the things about, keeping stuff way too long. Yeah.
I'm going to look at another one that we went through was, and I hate this one with a passion, but I'm learning to live with it. I'm used to having administrator rights on my computer and every computer in the office because I don't have time to call IT if I need to download some piece of software. And if you don't have administrator rights, it won't let you download software. But if you don't have administrator rights, it keeps bad actors from going lateral movements and they can't get in as easily. So we made that change.
I have to say though, working for a firm where I'm not the administrator. I don't have, working for a bigger firm, supposed to have my own firm. I've not missed that. And I don't really know. I mean, undoubtedly, I just haven't really come into a situation where I needed to have administrator rights. And so I guess what I'm saying is on a day-to-day basis, most of us aren't going to need administrator rights.
I haven't. It hasn't annoyed me yet. So I'm okay. It's
one of those things that you think would.
Yes, and I've been adamant against it for years. But I told my IT guy this year, I said, look, I want to be your poster child for security, for IT security. And so I've tried to really try to put into place every single little thing that they've recommended. So much so that he even told me, he was like, no, it's safe to save your passwords in Chrome and stuff. I said, no, it's not. We're not doing it. super secure. So there's some of those things that you want to look at. I'm looking at my little thing over there. Emergency preparedness plan and the disaster recovery plan. These are a couple of things you guys already have to deal with that, but you want to remember that cybersecurity should be a part of that as well. And what I would say, probably the most important piece of it is, what do you do at the moment you think something's going on? Because that is when you have to act, and depending on how quickly you act, it could shut it down a lot quicker or let it proliferate further, that kind of thing. To where you almost, I'm not saying you do a dry run practice, but my IT guy, Dan, he called it a tabletop exercise. And they would just pull like they had some like fictitious, this happened, what do you do? And they would just kind of around the table, and it was like, all right, you go do this, you go do that. And so we know if something hits us, the first thing we're doing is unplugging computers, physically unplugging from the wall and from the internet. Shut it down immediately. We can call and get support if we suspect something's going on. And on that note, anything fishy, you just got to assume it's bad. And, we get a lot of secure emails. And I have been pretty vigilant about this for a few years now. If I'm not expecting something from you, and I get an email and it's like, click this, or here's a link or whatever, I am going to call you. I'm not replying to that email. I will text you. If you're on my team, I will Slack you. Like, I will contact you outside of that email to make sure it's legit. I had an instant recently where my wealth management team was trying to get a hold of me. And so I got this secure email, wasn't expecting it, no branding, didn't have their firm or anything on it. But I finally realized what email it was from. So I emailed them separately. They're like, oh yeah, she's been trying to get a hold of you for 3 weeks. Well, listen, when I send secure email like that, I'm going to send it through our system. I'm going to send you a separate email that says, hey, heads up, I just sent you a link to such and such. Please follow through with it.
Well, the problem is a lot of times when people send secure emails, they trigger the security and they send it alone. That's one of it's very frustrating for me because I deal a lot especially with Texas Health and Human Services Commission employees. They will send secure emails willy-nilly, and it sort of like defeats the purpose. It dilutes it, so to speak.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to point out, you've got to be vigilant.
Well, this is obviously something we're going to have another episode on.
Yeah.
So,
we can see about Moshe, Micah.
Yeah.
No, that's Dan Moshe. Micah.
Yeah.
What's Micah's last name?
I can't remember. Oh, Thor.
Yeah.
But he's not a Viking.
Okay, not a Viking. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for hanging in there with us. It was almost 45 minutes, but we'll wrap it up. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Home Care Experience with TNA. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found it insightful. You can find more episodes of the Home Care Experience wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We'd love it if you could share this podcast with your network and/or leave us a review. It really helps us reach more people who are passionate about home care and hospice. Visit thehomecareexperience.com for links and resources in the show notes. Until next time, take care and keep making a difference in the lives of those you serve.